We all want our kids to grow up healthy and strong. To build such a human requires a solid foundation, and that starts with mental health. As homeschoolers, that's one of our primary subject areas. In this video, we're going to share some tips on positive mental health practices. Riki, kick us off.
I think it's helpful for kids to know that mental health, like many other things, is on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And so at one end, you've got a very, very healthy, peaceful, self-assured, confident, in flow sort of a state of a person.
Yes.
And then right down the other end, you've got major mental health issues. Could include psychosis and schizophrenia and paranoia and major depression and really, really painful and debilitating mental health issues. And in between those two polar opposites, you've got things down this end, like, mild anxiety or stress or, all very common things that we struggle with, and moving down towards the more major illnesses where, of course, down this end, depression can be a normal thing, like if your pet dies, or stress from relationships or stress from tests or exams or schooling. Or that
moving house.
Moving house
divorce.
is a big one. All those things that, and they could sort of potentially move you towards that end, and none of us are immune from sliding up and down this scale. So I think that's really important for our kids to know, that we can move along this spectrum and hopefully we can stay down the end of where we're feeling empowered and healthy and peaceful and strong, and we're able to not only care for ourselves but contribute and serve our community, serve others, and feel wonderful. Not all of the time, but that would be the goal, to stay down that end and accept that we all will fluctuate along that spectrum.
I'm glad you corrected yourself and you said we will. We will fluctuate, because there's no can in this. We will.
Yeah, okay. We will.
You've got no choice. It's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
And I love that you've described it as a spectrum, because that really destigmatizes the whole idea of mental health. No one thinks you're weak because you've got a sprained ankle and you can't play football for 4 weeks. It's like, oh yeah, he's got an injury, he's out.
Yeah.
But the moment it's a mental health thing, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, there's so much judgment involved and shame and...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But really, it's a spectrum, as you've described. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And that's something that we really need to get through to our kids, that this is normal, what you're feeling. And like you said, it's to stop yourself from sliding up this end of the scale. You need techniques for that. You need to be aware that you're on a slide, that you're heading down this way. So what do we do? Well, we've got these tools to use.
And if you find yourself heading towards that side of things, then it's not forever. That's, I think, a really important thing it doesn't have to be forever, You can move in that sort of more painful direction. It's inevitable. But to know that this is temporary, and like you said, find the tools to be able to work your way back down to the peaceful state.
So this first tip is to understand that it's a spectrum. I think by defining it, it can really help us control it.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. And to add to that definition, I would say a good measure of mental health is your ability to control your thoughts. So you want your thoughts to work for you. You want them to meet an objective. You want them to funnel you towards something positive, a good outcome. And if your thoughts aren't doing that for you, well, then they're not serving you, are they? They're serving some other purpose.
Yeah, like where your mind goes, your body follows.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
So understanding that mental health is a spectrum.
What would you say your number one tip is?
My number one tip is to have a positive worldview. So the way I see a human's worldview is that it's like a computer's operating system. It's how you deal with all of the inputs that are coming towards you. So it's your senses, it's your ideas, it's everything. It's how you see the universe, essentially. It's really important to have one that facilitates survival. So some people are pessimistic and they've got a worldview that says, everything sucks or whatever it is. That's not helpful. And whatever your beliefs are, something that you can't argue with is that right now we exist. Okay. However you believe the universe came into being, you are alive right now. And I presume if you're watching this, you come from the planet Earth. You're an Earthling, right? Now you think about how much of space hosts intelligent life. None that we know of, other than this tiny little speck in our solar... Earth is tiny relative to our solar system. Imagine relative to the entire universe, which, as far as I know, is infinite, but who knows? But that's pretty amazing, right? So there's not a lot of life out there, but there is here. Okay? So when people say that, life sucks, this or that, all that bad, all that non-survival, all that non-life is balanced by the fact that there is enough to sustain you. There is enough life. So to me, it's important to start at a point where you can say, I'm meant to be here. Okay? And that we can make it. From there, of course, we need to work out how we can make it together. But it's really important to have a positive worldview. And your worldview essentially are the parameters of your mind. That's where your thoughts bounce around. They tend not to bounce outside of that. I mean, yeah, we fantasize about things, but we know that that's fantasy. But in terms of realistic thoughts, they're defined by our worldview. If you think that all that matters is how much money you make, how many beautiful luxury cars you've got, then that's a pretty constricted worldview. Okay, your thoughts will be constrained by that. And the only way you'll see the world is by dollar signs. That's your input. So when you see anything, what's the value of that? Can that make me richer? You meet someone, can they help me advance my position in society? Can they help me grow my status? That sort of thing. Whereas if you've got a different worldview, a wider worldview, a more appreciative worldview, one that's full of gratitude, your life will change.
Yeah. So you're saying that your philosophy of life is what will guide pretty much everything that you do. So.
Yes, and it's going to guide everything that you see. So you won't see other things. It doesn't even exist to you.
Yeah.
If all you cared about was materialism and status, you wouldn't notice a lovely human being who you could have a wonderful human connection with and have a chat with on the train, for example. It just wouldn't matter to you. They wouldn't even exist. It'd be like a little blanked out bit of space.
Yeah. So it's like your laser focus is just on, in this instance, material gain, and everything else is excluded. Your vision is just on that one end goal of getting more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you miss out on a lot of things. And your mental health will depend on you being successful within your worldview. So you will be depressed and your mental health will be affected just because you don't have that car. Whereas if you didn't see the world in that way...
You wouldn't even see the car.
Exactly. And I know you wouldn't even... Because you don't see the world that way. And the thing is, there's no such thing as the right worldview. There's no absolute here. The only absolute is that we are here. The rest you've got to figure out yourself. And we don't want to put ideas into your head other than be positive. But it just shows that if your worldview isn't serving you, get a new one. Get one that is positive, because none of these are absolute.
They're all on a spectrum too.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my number one tip. Have a positive worldview. And if you don't, get a new one.
Yeah.
Riki, I'd love to hear your next one.
My next one is about medicine, because we all slide along this spectrum, and to be able to identify what helps us when we're finding ourselves travelling too far along the negative end of the spectrum, to identify what is it, like sort of like a first aid kit, like a mental health first aid kit that everyone's got their own. So for me, it would be, and it's building as I get older, but writing or journaling to my higher self, that's my number one go-to.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bit of cognitive behavioural therapy for myself, CBT. And I've got little techniques that I use that I can implement very quickly when I find that, like you were saying before, that faulty sort of thinking or unhelpful thinking can lead to all sorts of troubles. I find myself catastrophizing sometimes, and so that sort of, I pull that out of my little first aid kit if I need to challenge some thoughts that are really very far-fetched. Something like having a cold bath or a cold shower, or like using cold therapy or heat therapy, or going for a walk or exercise, or people will build their own mental health first aid kit. Some things that they'll have to use every day, like I guess like emotional hygiene or mental health hygiene, like you brush your teeth, you do things every day, whether it's meditate, whether it's journaling, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's having a hug, or you will find things, and hopefully that's something our kids will observe in us, that we're taking time out to do some things that are our medicine sort of thing, or our preventative, not necessarily medicine, but something that keeps you strong, and then help them develop things that make them strong. For some people, it might be playing a video game that helps if they're feeling stressed or anxious about something. For, for me, that would make me way more stressed if I had to, I can't do this.
Depends on the game. Don't play Cuphead. Okay? If you're struggling with your mental health, don't play Cuphead or Elden Ring.
Or be around anyone who's playing it either.
Yes.
Watching the stress level.
Yes.
Pretty intense. But it's hard to accept that for some people it would be playing a computer game to come home and unwind and play a computer game. It would be like, oh my God, for me that would be just really stressful, looking at a bright screen and trying to work out the controllers. And, so everybody's got their own way of keeping themselves strong and also using it as therapy in some way or medicine, to bring ourselves back to the positive side.
So to summarize that point, you're saying we need to know ourselves because this is individualized. For you, it's journaling. It's not video games. So know thyself.
Yes.
But you've also got to understand your baseline. That's the other thing. So you said you can do some things to de-stress. It's really important that you don't go too far against your physical health, for example. So I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong with coming home and having a drink to unwind if that's what you need to do. But if you use it all the time as a crutch, or if you get absolutely obliterated to forget your stresses, then that's going to have other effects on your life. And it might help you not hit this right now, but you may actually already be there, but just you're blanked out so you don't know it. So be really careful there too. It's the same with something like video games. You can easily say, I'm just going to unwind, play a bit of FIFA and, just chill out for a bit.
Yeah.
That's great. You do that too much and you end up, growing a beard and it's 3 months later and you're still in the basement. That's a problem.
Yeah. And avoiding feelings or avoiding addressing things just by using it as a distraction instead of something that just might help.
Yeah. You use the term first aid kit, right? So it's like using first aid. And when you apply first aid, that's a first thing you do. That's not the end. Okay. You might just be holding that bandage here because you're bleeding, and then you go to emergency after that. They stitch you up, then it heals. But that's not the end. You don't just hold this there and, okay, I'm done now. This is it for life. I'm just going to hold this bandage here. Yeah. So that'll get an infection. You'll have to amputate part of your head. I don't know how this, I'm not a doctor. So that's the key, isn't it? It's to understand yourself and to know the limits of what your treatment does.
Yes.
And then to overall build that foundation. So it's really getting to the core issues, isn't it?
And when you said know the limits of what you're able to do for yourself, sometimes you do need to seek support and help. And especially as a child, that would be hopefully something that they would feel comfortable doing all the time, to run for help, into whether it's a cry or whether it's a hug or whether it's fun or rough housing or whatever the child is sort of needing. So sometimes you might need to see a counsellor or a doctor, and that, okay, I've reached the limits of what I can do for myself, but now I need to seek more support and more help from external help.
Exactly.
So what would you say your second one is, Kiwi?
Build a community that reinforces your worldview. So I have a very positive worldview. What kind of people do you think I hang out with? Right. I hang out with lovely, positive people. I had one of the best experiences of my life on the weekend. We were at this wonderful homeschool end of term choir event, and we also had a band playing, a homeschool band, of which our son is part. To me, that's what mental health looks like. It was people being free, some of the most eclectic, diverse people you'll ever meet, all wonderful, all interesting people, just letting go and having fun. And when people think about what mental health looks like, or how do we achieve good mental health, quite often I believe, and this is just me spitballing here, I'm not saying that I've done any research, but I believe that a lot of people probably think of, a psychiatrist lounge or, the psychologist's office. When we think about mental health funding, we think, we need to provide all these mental health services. To me, it starts there in the community. And it was incredible, wasn't it? We had so much fun. Your dad came. We had multiple generations there. There were babies to elderly people. It was such a wonderful mix. We had a fire. It was so good. I think if we had more of a sense of community, then a lot of mental health issues would be addressed. So that's my tip, to build a great community and have the right people around you. So choose your friends. If it doesn't serve you, if you don't have to be friends with everyone, and you don't have to like everyone, and not everyone has to like you either. People who are all about status and materialism would look at us and think that we're absolute bums and they wouldn't want to hang out with us. Whereas the people I hang out with, I think they're the coolest people in the world. And, there's not a label inside, is there? It's just people being themselves, singing, having fun, playing instruments, sometimes badly. Right? We're not pros.
Yeah. And sharing personal stories and sharing that spectrum we were talking about. It's not just all about, everything's going great. It's everyone sharing their real struggles as well as their triumphs and joys and things to celebrate. So, that's part of what makes it so nourishing, that everyone seems to come there with a lot of authenticity and openness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Authenticity and openness, vulnerability, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It creates genuine human connection. That's where you know that, hey, we actually are on the same page here. And even if you're not on the same page with someone, even with your enemy, if you were to share your vulnerabilities with one another, you would see each other differently.
Yeah.
You would understand each other as humans. And that would make you want to work towards peace. So I love our community. And just to sum up this point, it's surround yourself with the right people. Be choosy. And actually, that's one of the great things about being a homeschooler, that our kids aren't forced to be friends with anyone. They don't have to sit next to someone in class and, well, these kids are the same age as you. You'd better get along with them. I feel that they've chosen well and they've got, the right people around them.
And they're all different age groups, which is nice. They choose whoever they feel compatible with and whoever they feel connection with, rather than, like you said, just someone who you happen to be in the same class with for 6 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Riki, give us your next one.
It's kind of the opposite to what I said earlier about identifying what makes you strong and putting together a mental health sort of first aid kit. It's finding out and identifying what makes you weak or what harms you.
Yeah.
And working out, once you identify those things and you know what harms you and what takes away your power, then avoid those things.
Yeah.
It's really just self-knowledge once again, and observing yourself, and perhaps having people around you as well who can help you learn that about yourself as well. So for kids, that would be our role, to help them if they're not seeing what's harming them, to help them see what could be harming. If it could be too much sitting down or too much watching something or too many video games or not enough sunshine or things that we can see that perhaps others can't or a child can't see, to help them identify, well, could this be harming you? And for us all to identify what disempowers us, what makes us weak and what...
And there's nothing weak about avoiding some of those things. We talk about building resilience a lot these days, and it's like, well, you've just got to put up with it. You don't. If you hate crowds, go when there's no crowds. Why put yourself through it? I don't see the point of that. There are things that we just simply do not like. And I think that it's true for everybody. We've all got something that we just cannot stand. Try to not do it. I don't think you should try to do it and just get through it. To get through it if you have to. I think resilience is there when you absolutely need it.
Yeah.
It's like martial arts, I'm not going to go and start a fight with anyone who looks at me wrong and just go, well, I've just got to walk through this guy. No, you avoid it. You avoid it as much as you can. I've been accosted on the street by a guy and I avoided it. It worked. And I turned around and someone else had grabbed the guy and then a bouncer grabbed him. It was all on. But I'm glad I walked away from that situation without having to throw a punch. And also, there are things that you cannot avoid. Things will happen in your life that will absolutely knock you for six. And I've got friends who've been in situations where, what are you supposed to feel other than depression right now? It's about getting through that. They've been put in, hospital, so to speak. That would happen to anybody. They got hit with a sledgehammer. Boom, you're gone. You've got to wire that jaw after you get smacked there. You know what I mean? And that's totally normal too. And that's not weak.
You've got to recover and rebuild and heal.
And that takes so much time. It's just like any wound. If you pop a hamstring or you do an ACL, that's 12 months for an ACL or 9 months these days. Achilles, 12 months. No one says you're weak. It's the same with a divorce or getting retrenched, whatever it is. These things are huge and they will affect you. The death of a loved one, slide down that end of the spectrum and that's totally normal and you've got to know that.
But things that can help you slide down to that negative end are things like ignoring those warning signs, like not taking care of your sleep, not protecting your sleeping time, not eating well, and all those things that you can avoid if you identify them, that can add on top of all of that emotional injury you might have for something that's happened in life. If you then don't avoid the things that harm you further, then it just can make the recovery time so much harder.
So when you're physically injured, quite often You're put on an alcohol ban because that's something that would exacerbate your injury if you're a football player.
And increase inflammation and
all sorts of things. If you've just had chemotherapy, you'd get a whole list of things that you cannot do because it'll make things worse. It's the same for mental health. Right now, these are the emergency measures we need to put in place because that'll keep you going down this end. We've got to stop here and we've got to try to get you back here. One day you'll be able to do all those things again. It's no problem. But right now, you cannot hear that person's name because it'll set this off. It's something as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to take away all the pictures of that person to get over them. It's these dramatic things that have to happen. And, there's plenty of things you can do when you don't have an Achilles injury, but you can't do once you've got it, right? Same thing, you're walking around in a moon boot for 12 months. Well, you might be walking around in a mental moon boot for 12 months as well. And that's totally fine and normal. So know thyself, avoid harm where possible. And when it does happen, you need to make the necessary adjustments.
What's your third tip, Kiwi?
My third tip is to get tools that make you good at life. So going back to my first point, which was about your worldview, you form your worldview and then you need to survive within those parameters. So if you are an excessively materialistic person, well, you need to go and get a really, really high paying job so you can go and buy all those labels that make you happy and make you think that this is all worth it. For me, in my life, what's given me a lot of self-esteem is music, for example. This is just one small example. I've had some great results connecting with people through music. And I'm not good, that's the thing. But getting to a point where I can actually jam with people has given me so much joy. So just having skills gives you self-esteem. Building more and more, and a lot of these are living skills, like just being able to take care of yourself. For me, in my current situation, I've got a lot of self-esteem out of playing music with my friends and also helping other people learn music. For example, our son. Learning to read music, being able to jam with your dad, who's another level to me, but being able to hold my own, that's been really fun because it allows me to connect meaningfully with people, which is part of my worldview. Another thing is martial arts. I've met a lovely person who looked at me and sized me up and said, "Do you spar?" I hadn't sparred for a long, long time. I hadn't actually practiced martial arts for 17 years. And when you were there at the time, you were like, "Yeah, I spar. It's been a while." I actually lost the desire to get punched in the face after I met Riki. And I was like, I don't need to be doing this anymore. But it'd been a long, long time. And I was like, yeah, okay. And that's really been amazing for me. Just having those skills because I'm able to give him something, give him a really good sparring partner. And I've been able to connect with somebody. So again, that suits my worldview. And I'm able to make enough money to stay alive while spending so much time with the kids. So I think having good skills that match your worldview are really important. So get good at stuff is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you're saying that find skills that support what you love as well as what can support connection as well.
Exactly. Well, that's if connection is part of your worldview.
Yeah, that's true.
If you think that everyone should be a lone wolf and you never want to talk to anyone, well, then you need to develop hunting skills, right? So you can live in the forest and kill wild deer and whatever else and cook them. That's important to you.
Yeah.
For me, not so much.
Can I add an extra tip?
I don't think we've got any rules. No one's watching at this point anyway. You can say whatever you want.
I think they probably, hopefully would intertwine with all of those, but nature, connecting with nature is really important, as well as potentially, maybe not for everybody, but creativity is a big part of mental health as well.
I don't know. Maybe it is for everyone. Because we come from nature.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make it in nature? There's no set rule. You've got to be creative, right? For someone who's a forest-dwelling species, you've got to, create these weapons. For someone who grew up in the savannah, you need to do this. For someone from the mountains, you need to do this. So it's important.
Yeah, and for kids, we all start out playing, and that's creativity. I'd say they're essential as well.
Creativity is how you make your mark on the world.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I'm going to add another tip, and I'm not Muslim, and I'm not trying to spread any propaganda here or convert anyone to anything. So, I'm just an open-minded guy who thinks a good idea is a good idea, wherever it comes from. And I might be wrong about this, that the word Muslim means one who submits. So it's to submit to the will of God in his case. And I think that letting go of control can be a really good way of working on your mental health. In Buddhism, they say life is suffering and desire is the cause of suffering. When I think about desire, I don't think it means, I want that. What I think it means is you want a result. You want things to go your way. You expect things to go a certain way. something I've learned because I'm old now is that there's no should in life. There's no should. This shouldn't happen this way. Life doesn't work like that. We think these are the rules. It should work like that. This isn't a game of chess where there are set rules. The only rule that I know of is that the universe happened. And then from there, it cooled down. The earth formed. It sustained life. That's it. So the dice were rolled and the rest is up to us. So there's no should. And the great thing about that attitude of letting go is that you don't believe that you're owed anything. You don't believe that things should happen in a certain way. So you just accept things as they are. And then from that point, you can make something of it. So I really liked that. I thought that was a really positive thing. So submission might sound like a negative, weak thing. I think that it can be really beautiful. And I like the way that he explained it. I mean, really, what other choice do you have other than to submit? We can't change what's happened. All we can do is make good decisions now. That's the best thing we can do.
Yeah.
And it's good if you've got good mental health in order to do that. So they're just a few of our ideas about practicing positive mental health. We'd love to know yours. Please comment down below. Please let us know what you're talking to your kids about. And remember, it's a spectrum. That's the most important thing I've got out of this. Thank you, Riki, for that. There's no stigma attached to this at all. We all slide up and down this all the time. So let's find the things that work for us. Let's try to support our kids to develop their practices so that they can live a lovely, meaningful, and connected life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.